Library of Heaven's Path. Chapter 29, You Must Be Sick. On. Shenbairu, who was the compendium pavilion as well, heard the continuous sounds of footsteps and flipping of books. Initially, she didn't think much into, but as time passed, she started to feel that something was amiss with the situation. One would need to read a book slowly to comprehend its contents. How could it be possible for anyone to flip through it so quickly? Bewildered, she couldn't resist walking over to take a look. After which, she saw Zhang Xuan flipping the books from the first shelf. It was very apparent to see that he wasn't reading through the contents of the books, but more like looking for something. Is this the reason why Elder Mo denied him entry? After watching for a moment, she realized that the other party didn't have the intention to stop. Gadeng, Shenbairu's heartbeat. Previously, the reason why she couldn't resist speaking out to help him upon seeing the difference between the current him and his previous self was because she wanted him to work hard so as to be freed from his current awkward position. However, she would have never imagined that this fellow wasn't here to study but to look for something. This was the compendium pavilion. Every day, there were innumerable teachers who come in, so it was impossible for there to be anything valuable hidden here. Flipping through these books so casually was almost a blasphemy to this compendium pavilion. How repulsive. Perhaps. He knew that I would be coming to the compendium pavilion today, so he intentionally waited outside then came in to make such a ruckus to capture my attention. Humph, this would only provoke my ire. The image of the young man in Shenbairu's heart fell to the pits. Due to her beauty, many people have tried many ways to get on her good side, as well as to attract her attention. In her opinion, Zhang Xuan wasn't even trying to look through the books. Rather, he was intentionally making those noises to change her opinion of him. In reality, she hated it when people made up this kind of show. After looking at her a moment longer, she ascertained her opinion. If he was truly here to browse through the books, how could he possibly be reading books of all genres? Furthermore, to be flipping through them at such rapid speed, he was probably unable to even ascertain the name of the manual, needless to say, its contents. Humph. With a darkened expression on her beautiful face, she walked over to Zhang Xuan. Zhanglashi, what are you doing? Reading books. Zhang Xuan didn't realize that his actions have already been labeled as putting up a show and replied casually without raising his head. Reading books? Humph. Shenbairu harumphed coldly. Coldness emanated from her jade-like face as she said, if you think that your actions are cool and would attract my attention, please retract those immature thoughts of yours. I, Shenbairu, do not fall for such petty tricks. Furthermore, your actions will only incur my irritation. Oh. All right. Zhang Xuan continued flipping through his books. He intended to imprint all of the manuals in the compendium pavilion onto the Library of Heaven's Path by today, and time was a little tight for him, so he didn't have the effort to spare to be chatting with others. Besides, in his opinion, the other party was simply being too self-important. What business did she have to do with what he was doing? You might be truly pretty, but it isn't like I have yet to meet a beautiful woman like you. In the previous world, in the era of information, there are all kinds of beauties stored in the hard disk. Furthermore, they are skilled in blowing, pulling, playing and singing. A cold beauty like you does not hold much interest to me. I don't have the energy to think of ways to attract your attention. Since you understand it, please leave this compendium library. Stop wasting your effort here. Seeing how the young man's head remained lowered, still putting on a show, Shenbairu turned and gestured him to leave. Deng 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 deng. The sound of the footsteps of the young man leaving. This is more like it. Seeing how he gave up readily, Shenbairu nodded her head in satisfaction. Just as she was about to continue to read her book, she heard the sound of the flipping of books echoing in the library once again. Hualala. Hualalala. Turning her head to take a look, she realized that the young man had no intention to leave. You. Shenbairu almost exploded from anger. Are you done yet? I have already said that doing this will just incur my irritation, yet you still persist in doing so. Is there a point to it? At this point, her slim figure straightened and she walked up to Zhang Xuan once again, and disgust could be clearly seen in her pitch-black pupils. Did you not hear my words? The more you behave like this, the more disgusted I would be with you. You won't earn my fancy like this. Are you sick? Seeing the other party coming over to bother him again, Zhang Xuan was a little irritated. He stopped his actions and said, "You read your own stuff while I'll read my own. If you are really bored, you can squat by a corner and draw circles. Don't bother me here. It is not like I have never met a beautiful lady in my life before. Why are you acting so haughtily? You." She didn't expect the young man to speak like this. Shenbairu felt her sight blurring and she almost died from the overwhelming rage welling in her. Who was she? Hongtian Academy's #1 beauty. Blessed with great talent and looks, almost all of the teachers and students in the academy regarded her as a goddess. Before her, they would act respectfully, not daring to even speak loudly for fear of offending her. Yet, you dare to say, I am sick? Even asking me to squat at a corner to draw circles? I am a lady, all right? Draw circles, draw your mum's fat head. Shenbairu felt a heavy and stuffy sensation on her chest that she was unable to relieve. Hualala. Hualalala. Her face flushed red from anger. Just as she was about to reprimand the other party, she realized that the young man had gone back to flipping through the books after being done with his words, not even sparing her an additional glance. Fine, fine. Continue putting on an act. See how I will reveal your true colors. Luoluo, Shenbairu gritted her teeth tightly and stomped her leg. This was the first time that a man had talked to her in such a manner. Fine, aren't you putting on an act of browsing through the books now? Let's see how long you can put up with it. When you are finally unable to continue on, I will expose you and leave you embarrassed. Then, Shenbairu no longer bothered herself with Zhang Xuan and instead, angrily walked back to the manual she had looked for previously and casually took it out. Then, sitting in a corner in the room, she started copying it down. Initially, her mood was quite good today and she intended to study for quite a while to boost her knowledge. Yet, never in her dreams would she expect to meet such an infuriating fellow. In the midst of copying down her notes, she sneaked glances periodically towards him. The young man still continued flipping through all of the books with the same speed, seemingly adamant to leave no book upturned. It seems that as long as it was a book of the Compendium Pavilion, he would surely flip through it once. Humph. Let's see how long you can keep up the act for. After being rebuked by Zhang Xuan, Shenbairu no longer retained her calmness from before and she intended to make things difficult for him. As she copied down her notes slowly, she waited for the moment when the other party was unable to keep up with the act. However, what left her bewildered was that the young man repeated his actions over and over again with the same astonishing speed. From the very first bookshelf, he moved from one row to another, flipping through the books, from afternoon to night, not even sparing a single minute to rest. It had already been 6 to 7 hours, yet the fellow was still persisting on with the same motion. Even Shenbairu found it inconceivable at this point. If his aim was to attract her attention, she had already clearly told him that she detested such actions, so he should have stopped then. So, how was it possible for him to continue flipping through like this? Not to mention, for such a long period of time? Could this fellow's brain be convulsing or something? Has his cultivation went berserk and he himself became insane? Suddenly, a thought popped up in her head. She had heard that when one's cultivation goes berserk, one would start to do many abnormal actions. Could it be that flipping through books non-stop here be one of this kind of abnormal actions? She was looking at the young man with a bizarre expression as she started to think that the young man was abnormal when she noticed that Zhang Xuan stopping in his actions after flipping through the books in the final row. So much knowledge. After a consecutive 6 to 7 hours of hard work, he had finally imprinted all of the books in Hongtian Academy's Teacher Compendium Pavilion in the Library of Heaven's Path in his head. Through the compilation of flaws and strengths from the Library of Heaven's Path towards each individual book, he gained a certain level of understanding towards the cultivation technique, battle technique, pills, equipment forging, formations and such. With Zhao Yu's pure yin body, she should cultivate this manual. However, before that, I have to do some preparations. After imprinting the entire Compendium Pavilion, he finally understood how he should solve the problem with Zhao Yu's physical body. He couldn't resist heaving a breath of relief. He had even found out the loopholes and incomplete portions in the previous 3 dan of his cultivation. As long as he found some time to recultivate through them, he could correct and perfect them. Gugugu. When he was finally finished, he felt an ache in his stomach. After working for such a long period of time, his hunger pangs had already long struck, just that he was oblivious to it then. Shaking his head, he started to walk towards the exit of the Compendium Pavilion. However, he had only taken a few steps when he saw TellBrary standing before him, looking at him with a cold gaze. To think that this woman would still be here after he had flipped through the books for 6 to 7 hours. Couldn't be bothered with such a self-important fellow, Zhang Xuan continued walking towards the exit of the Compendium Pavilion. Stop it right there. When he has just walked through the exit, he heard Elder Mo bellowing at him. At this very instant, Elder Mo's face darkened to the point that it seemed like the coalescence of numerous storm clouds, ready to explode at any moment. He had tolerated this young man for too long. At this moment, there was only a single thought in his head. Troublemaker, troublemaker, and troublemaker. Elder Mo. Zhang Xuan looked at him with a puzzled expression. Zhang Xuan Lishi. Elder Mo's face was cold. With an intentionally harsher tone, he said, "You came to the Compendium Pavilion not to study, but to intentionally cause trouble. From now on, the Compendium Pavilion no longer welcomes you. If you step in here once more, I will break your legs." Causing trouble? Elder Mo, where did all these come from? I have been looking through the book seriously. How did I become a troublemaker? Although he had already duplicated an identical Compendium Pavilion in his head and no longer had to come here, he still felt displeased upon hearing those words. Why is it that when other people are here, you think of them as studying, but when I am here, you think of me as a troublemaker? What kind of logic is this? Aren't you being too unreasonable?